Thank you everyone for coming. Anyone want to introduce yourselves and tell us which school you're from?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rupert Holder from Northlands Primary, P5.
Nice, thanks for coming.
Good afternoon, Andrea Isaac from St. David's Primary.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Sedalia Swadesh Chen from Purvis Primary.
Great.
And then I think we had a couple people who were just connecting still. Maybe we can go ahead and start.
All right. Yes, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you taking the time out in your afternoon. I know how hectic teacher life is, so thank you all for making the time to attend this workshop. All right, so this workshop is on the gunpowder plot. It's a cross-curricular approach through Ben, and I am Kelly Rade, and Florence Brown is with me today, amazing P5 teacher from St. George's Prep. All right, so as I said, Ben is the Bermuda Education Network, and they're a registered charity that's here to support public school teachers and students. So as you can see from the graphic, they've 750 students have received services. Over 100 teachers have been supported and 5 programs have been developed. Over the summer, I worked with the Horizon Summer Learning Program, which is an amazing opportunity for our P3 students that were just approaching grade level. These weren't children that were on IEPs or drastically needed support, but they just needed that extra boost. Like if I had one more month, this kid would be on grade level. So Ben took 50 students and they gave them a free camp for 3 weeks and just gave them intensive literacy instruction and tutoring, and it was amazing. Ben also does the Teacher of the Year Award, so I'm not sure if you've seen that on social media yet, but if you'd like to nominate someone, we would love to hear from you. And they also do a book club for younger students where the kids sign up for it. It's like, I believe it's in, I'm gonna get this wrong, I think it's Victoria Park, but the students, younger kids like preschool, P1, come and it's like a little story hour, and then they get a copy of the book. So Ben is really trying to just help these students and these kids and really develop those relationships and the love of literacy and learning. So I'm Kelly Rade, I am Bermudian. I'm currently working at Summersfield Academy, but I was in the ministry for 10 years at St. George's Prep. I've done conferences for BUT, for Summersfield before I was here, and ICANN math program. And I was the director of the Horizon Summer Learning Program this summer, and I'm now the Ben content director. And my lovely colleague is Florence Brown.
Hi, everyone. I'm Florence. I'm a primary 5 teacher at St. George's Prep. I've been teaching in the public system for 4 years. I'm currently the teacher leader for English here, and I'm the MTSS coach at the school. I also have a master's degree in education with a focus on restorative practices, which is a little bit like my school baby. And I've also offered PD around the use of restorative practices within schools. Outside of teaching, my passions really do revolve around Bermuda and everything that it has to offer, natural history, the environment, and you can often find me anywhere outside, but particularly anywhere on the water.
So we're going to be talking, Ben uses the See, Think, Wonder routine, which is a great, don't worry about writing any of this stuff down. You'll get access to all of our slides. And then I have another Google slide doc where it's just images, information, and lots of little extra tidbits of
resources.
Thank you, love. Other resources that you can use for this unit. So the See, Think, Wonder routine, it's designed to help kids think outside the box. It's to really get them thinking and just really grasping what they want to know. And, you know, because kids have so many questions, and this is just getting them that routine down. So they're really exploring that and they're not just sitting there passively in their lessons. So the first lesson plan we have for you today is just an overview of the gunpowder plot. So who knows about the gunpowder plot? What do you know about it? Sure, go ahead, shout it out.
Know that there were 2 gentlemen who sneaked ashore, got into the magazine, took about 100 casks of gunpowder, I should say, and with the help of some whale boaters, got the cast out to 2 ships Lady Packet, and Charleston and Savannah, and got them off until to George Washington in Philadelphia. And their task helped Bermuda, well, the population at that time, the colony, to get food and medical supplies.
Excellent. Well done. Anyone else want to add something else to it? All right. Well, maybe you'd like to think, see, and wonder about it. So obviously we don't have pictures of it, but I've got some images from artwork from around that time period, or depicting that time period. So like I said, you'll have access to this as well, but it's a good way to get the kids thinking about it. Like, ask the kids, where do you think this was? Well, that was an aerial view, best that they could do, of St. George's back then. And asking them like, oh, why didn't they just use a drone? And talking about the technological differences between now and then. And what do you wonder about? Well, you know, if we were looking at it today, you could see your house. Where are all the houses? Where are all the golf courses? And just getting them, their minds warmed up. It's a great icebreaker, and just really getting them warmed up for their activity. So there's a few images in here. And like you said, they were rowing out to those boats. It wasn't like they could just pull up to a dock. They had to row out, and how like labor intensive that must have been. And while researching this, I didn't realize they had 200th anniversary stamp collection commemorating this. So there's more, you know, more pictures and images that can really wake up their thoughts and get them almost imagining that they were really there. And I also, a part of the mural in Dockyard depicts that as well, by Graham Foster. Oh, I'll come back to those. Give me one sec. Okay, so that would be the first part of your lesson, just trying to get them engaged in history. And then there's, at the end of that slides, there's also just background information. I'm sure you guys have been doing this for quite a while. You know your own stuff, but if you wanted to just get little refreshers, it's there. And then Florence has also added a link to some other resources on the Gunpowder plot as well. So other questions to get them talking about would be, well, why did America need Bermuda's help? Why didn't we just stay out of it? You know, like, why would Bermuda risk upsetting Britain? Well, we were facing famine. We needed food. We needed supplies. So it was kind of a win-win situation to help each other out at that point. But getting the kids talking about that in small groups. And how did we get so much gunpowder? This I found fascinating, because I had never thought of that before. I'm like, oh, we just had gunpowder. Well, whenever ships ships would arrive in Bermuda, they would confiscate their gunpowder. You want to stay here? We're going to take all your gunpowder. And making those connections to maybe the travel authorization now. You want to land here? We're going to take your money. And we have taxes now when visitors come. Just to come to Bermuda, the government's going to take something out of it. So in trying to make those real world connections as well. So in groups, they would talk about them, discuss them, and they could either write their responses in their social studies notebooks if they have them, or utilizing technology and having them have a recorder type up their thoughts in their Chromebooks. And then you could share them all together and put them in one Google Drive. Any questions about that? Okay.
Okay, so for the second lesson, it's just building upon that initial understanding, but then really going a little bit deeper, so that you're actually in that process of evaluating those decisions. So I've got here the WALT, which actually ties in perfectly with what our social studies standards are for that, for this unit. And then to start off, we thought it would be a great idea to just recap. If you're anything like me, and most kids are also a little similar, if you get told a fact, a piece of information once, you don't necessarily always retain it straight away, especially in social studies when we're talking about a lot of people, a lot of dates, and things that aren't always connected to things that children see as very tangible. So to start off, I have a Kahoot, which is linked into the resources, and you can either do that by setting it up for the children to do in a self-assigned way, on Kahoot, or you can display it on your smartboard and do it as a class. I think probably if I'd only ever done one lesson of this, I would start off with the Kahoot as a class, as like a collaborative thing, and then maybe use it as a post assessment later on in assigning it individually. And that just recaps the events, some of the main personalities involved, and dates. And then by this point, most of us probably will have had our field trip over to Mitchell House, and we'll have more of a in-depth understanding of what happened from the lesson before as well. So in this lesson, we really want to unpack the reasoning and unpack Bermuda's standpoint in that. And if certain people hadn't acted in the way that they did, where might we be? Where might that have left us? What might the consequences have been? So the second part of this lesson would be a class jigsaw. So there's two overarching questions: what happened if Bermuda wasn't involved at all, or what happened if the thieves had gotten caught. You can either just pick one of those avenues to go down to, or you could pick both. But the main thing that we really want them to grasp by the end of this is the three different ways that this could have had an impact: the impact to Bermuda itself, the impact to our relationship with the UK, and the impact to our relationship with the US. So to start off the lesson, I would do a think, pair, share, where you have one or two of these overarching big questions, and you just have the kids doing turn and talk partners or table group partners and thinking, what would have happened if Bermuda wasn't involved at all? Where would that have left us? And just get them thinking, what would have happened if the thieves got caught? Can you imagine? Where would they have, what would have been their consequence? What would they have done at the time? What would have been the result of that? And then they can share out. And then after that, you really want to go into that specific. Once they've had an idea of what their responses might have been, then they can close in on that a little bit more and unpack some of those questions a little bit more. So in small groups, picking just one of the questions, not the whole overarching theme. They've had a chance to think about that, but they're just focusing on one. And the reason for that is in social studies, a lot of the time it's just a lot. And for them to get to that deeper level, they don't really have the time in one lesson to answer everything, but we still want their exposure to be there for that. So in small groups, picking just one of those questions: what happens if the thieves would have got caught? What would be the impact to Bermuda? So that's us thinking about what would have happened. The gunpowder wouldn't have got to the US. The thieves would have been in trouble. What would have been the result of that? And building a poster, and it doesn't have to be the most in-depth, massive poster, because the idea of the poster is for them to be able to share their thought process at the end, so that in the end, there's a display of class posters that answer these questions, where they can easily see, oh, on that picture, they have an image of a boat with an X through it. That means that the trade would have still been banned, or whatever it may be. So a poster using words, graphics, statements that they can build in table groups or group partners, and then to share their responses to those questions and present that. And then after that, they've then had a good think, a solid portion of the lesson, most of the lesson, thinking about these questions and implications, which is really in evaluating the importance of the historical personalities' deeds. They've said, was that something that they should have done? Was that something they shouldn't have done? What was the result of it? How could it have been different? And then they can answer this question, which I would pose as either a discussion topic or an assignment on Schoology, based on what we've just done. Were the actions of Colonel Henry Tucker justified, and was stealing the gunpowder justified? There's a huge, and this is also an opinion piece, but also they need to be backing it up with their understanding. Because if they just say, no, it wasn't, they broke the law, have they missed the point in why they broke the law in the first place? So, and I would only say, this is not something, again, this is a lesson you don't want. This is something that a lot of times we get bogged down with these really juicy things that we're meant to do, and then we run out of time. So if they've done all the scaffolding for that, they should be able to answer that final question, which is where you're going to get the glimpse into their independent understanding, in about a paragraph or so, couple sentences. But because they've done all of this talking and building in class together, they'll be able to actually have an answer that's not just yes or no. Okay, any questions on that? And again, the Kahoots in the resources, and all of the, I've also attached the chapter that's tied to this in Wars and Defense in the social studies book that they can recap to help them have a grasp on the events that took place as well. I'm just looking through to see. I don't think so. Okay.
All set?
Yeah.
All right.
And then the next lesson ties into our literacy standards massively. So, and this actually is what kids love doing when we are doing historical units in social studies, because it really does bring it alive to them. So using our understanding, this is now saying we know what happened in the Gunpowder Plot. We're completely solid on our understanding of that. We know exactly when it happened, who was involved and why it happened. And we've also thought about why it was important. Now we're going to write a diary entry from August 14th, 1775, from the thieves' perspective. So this is about them stepping into the shoes of the personalities involved. And this is important, and it's super important for all of us to consider why people acted the way that they did in the past, what fueled them, and how must they have felt. When we can understand the motives behind people's actions, then that helps us to be open to understanding more. So in groups of 3 or 4, the first little hook to our lesson is, and you can decide what works in your school building. For example, I am not going to have my kids walking right past all of their friends in P4 and 5 and P4 and 6, trying to be stealthy and pretend they're not going to get caught, because that probably will cause a little bit of a ruckus. But I'm going to pick a very strategic point A and point B and have them see if they can get from that point A to point B without anyone realizing. What are they doing? How do they sound? How do they feel? And one of the people in that group is going to be recording on their Chromebook so that they can look back at those actions. When we talk about stretching out action, it's often good to be able to rewatch or redo whatever the action is to be able to figure out how you stretch it out. Then they're going to turn and talk when they get back to a partner to think about and say, what did you feel like? What did you feel like when you were trying to get there? Oh, I had butterflies in my stomach. I was nervous. I nearly laughed. Talk about it, get them excited about it. What did they have to do? And then once they've done that, that's where we can tie it into some of the things that we really want them to be doing in their writing. So using adjectives and adverbs to describe motion, and using simile and metaphor to describe emotion, or any other type of descriptor. So in your class charts, what you can do is, and typically it's great to model with an I, we, you type of format so that they know where to go with it. So I would have a class chart set up already with my example of an adverb that I used and my example of a simile. And I would do adverbs and adjectives first, because that's usually something that they can grasp a little more quickly than similes and metaphors. And just have a class list, class chart that you come up and add to. And then say, well, these link to the emotions, these movements that we were doing link to the emotions that we were feeling. We can turn those into similes and metaphors, which really bring to light what that emotion was, and then give an example of your own. I've also in the lesson plans got some examples for you so that you can just use mine as well. And then once you've got 2 class charts where you've got your adverbs and adjectives, your similes and metaphors, then they can get started on a diary entry. So they're going to be writing in the first person, retelling the event. Be very strategic about where their starting point is, because a lot of the times, and when I've done things similar to this in the past, they imagine they're the character and then talk about, you know, what they had for breakfast and 5 years ago when I was a boy, and you're like, oh, stay on track. So be very specific about the questions that you want them to answer. So tell me what time of day you were getting ready to do this. Who else was there? What made you agree to do it? How did you get into the magazine? How did you get the gunpowder out of the magazine? How did you get it down to Tobacco Bay? How did you load it? What was that like? And getting home. In all of those, if they're using adverbs and simile or metaphor, they don't need to do a sentence that says, I was scared, I was nervous, because it will already be shown through the bank of different examples that we'll have on the board. And then they can share their little diary entry that they've written.
I love this one so much. Like, can't you just picture the kids?
Oh, absolutely.
trying to get down the hallway.
And especially after they've been on the field trip where they've done some of those activities and they have it in their head, the kind of distances and things like that. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. I don't know how big at St. George's Prep, they have a very large field. So I'm a big fan of when I was teaching P5, there was an abandoned golf course. So we would, find a location. It doesn't have to be inside, find a location outside to make it even more real.
Mhm.
And we would get a lot of tourists in St. George's. So we would try and walk through it. And we had a little signal. We would pretend that if we saw a tourist, then that was someone who was onto you, and we'd yell, caw, caw, and everyone would just get down and try and hide as fast as they could. And like, those are the things that they, like, years later, kids come back and go, oh, remember when we did that? And they just have that love of learning, and they remember stuff that they would not have remembered had we just read it out of the book. Like, I love it when history comes alive and the kids have those experiential learning opportunities. So the fourth lesson is also incorporates technology. So this whole thing got started because of a letter. George Washington wrote the letter and it came to Bermuda, and we never really talk about how long that took, right? How long did they have to plan this? Because if we're in a similar situation today, would you write a letter? Who's going to write a letter? It's urgent. So incorporating technology and talking about how technology has changed the way we communicate today. And I don't know if any of you have seen that when the war in Ukraine first began, teenagers were having or creating TikToks. They would find an abandoned tank and get on it and do a TikTok video and show, their fellow countrymen what to do if you found one, how to operate it, how to hijack it, how to disable it, and same with like weapons and stuff. And when I got goosebumps when I was reading that or saw that on the news, because that's how fast that we're advancing. Like, the old methods are gone. Kids were trying to help in a real active, serious problem that affected their lives, and they were quickly disseminating information to others to make a difference. So our kids today would not write a letter. It is great to have those letter writing skills. It is wonderful to know to put the date at the top, to do, to have your opening, your body, your closing, your signature. But realistically, if we were going to do something similar today, they would post a video. They would start a podcast, which I still think podcasts are fantastic, but I'm not sure how many of our kids would go for that with this option. But I think it's important to introduce it as well. It's one of the technology standards. So, or make a TikTok. By no means am I saying you all have to get TikTok accounts, but if you phrase it like that when you're making the video, then I think you'll get a little more buy-in. And they need to choose one of the mediums and to persuade Bermuda into helping the US. They have to be able to articulate why they chose that and compare and contrast why they wouldn't write a letter, why this one is a better method, and have concrete reasons, and using all that persuasive language when they do develop it. Yes, so I made this graphic organizer because if you just tell kids, go make a TikTok on history, like Florence said, they get a little sidetracked. So there might be an elaborate dance as opposed to what we actually need on there. So to rein them back in, I find it's helpful to have graphic organizers. So the top of this, they get to circle or write which one they want. Are they going to do a podcast, an email, or a video? And then get their thoughts on there. Why did you choose this method? Well, I thought I've got so much to say. I thought we should do a podcast, and I went to say it with somebody, or I didn't, or, maybe I didn't want people to know it was me. Maybe, if this is a serious business and we could get in trouble for it, I don't want my face on that. They're less likely to recognize my voice than to see me. So they could choose podcast for those reasons. Would they want to send an email? Would they want to do a video? And then what will you say? What is your message? What are your needs? What do you need out of this situation? How are you going to ask for help? what type of help do you need, and getting into those specifics. And then also the literacy standards involved, and what type of persuasive language will you include? How are you going to get people on your side? Wow, what is going to, and even like that hook, because if it's not you, I'm sure you've all scrolled on social media, and if it's not interesting, now our attention spans are so small that if it's not interesting in the next 5 seconds, you're on to the next one. How are you going to really like hook somebody in so they listen to your entire message? Now, I'm just going to switch screens for 1 sec, because I have, Florence and I have given like blurbs of our lessons, but I also have, so this document is available for you as well, where, like we said, you don't have to write any of this down. You'll have all of our slides, but this is the main lesson plans. It's got all your curriculum codes. It's got other, so when I spoke about the Gunpowder Plot overview, there's a little background YouTube video for kids about the Revolutionary War, because they need to know what was happening there before they can expand their thinking of why Bermuda needed to get involved. There's additional articles listed here, and then the actual main activity and vocabulary. We know vocabulary is key for our learners, because some of our kids, when you say a magazine, they're not going to think of artillery, you know, so that going over those types of things and just being sympathetic, that's a great, you know, how are they sympathetic? Well, we know you're having sympathy for somebody, but also in times of crisis, in times of war, it takes on a much deeper meaning. And embargo is huge as well. So that was for each of those lessons we just discussed. It's written out in this format as well for you. And like Florence was saying, there's more activities of things that she's done as well involved in there. And it's got your WALT and your TIB and your success criteria. So that's all done for you. Does anyone have any questions about that? If you do, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Hi. You said, where would we access this? Something about resources. I didn't catch the first part.
So Steph and Ben from, Steph and Latoya from Ben are our fabulous behind the scenes helpers. So they'll email those all out to everyone after.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
And our partner with the Gunpowder Plot for the exponential learning and our field trips is the St. George's Historical Society. And Florence, would you like to speak about that?
Sure. So the St. George's Historical Society is in the town of St. George's. It's where you'll be going to. That's your initial port of call when you go on your field trips. And they have been doing a wonderful job the last couple of years bringing some of our history to life. So it's in the Mitchell House, which is a really old historical building, and it's kitted out to look like an old historical building, including some of the great and wonderful contraptions that may have existed that we don't use anymore, and furniture as well. And they also reenact a lot for us. So when you get there, there will be people dressed in traditional old period clothing, and they'll be trying to bring some of that history to life to the kids. They are also great supports, because a lot of the information that they have is stuff that we wouldn't maybe necessarily remember. Yeah, it's just they're a great support for any of your, not only this, but any of our social studies topics that are steeped in history. They are a wonderful support for.
And now this document is all of the new curriculum standards and how it's aligned with these lessons. So you've got your social studies, evaluating the importance of Bermuda's historical personalities, deeds, and the time period, and to Bermuda's development, evaluating the importance of Bermuda's historical personnel. Oh, I wrote that twice. I'm going to fix that one for you because there's another one that should be included. Sorry about that. This is why we're going to send them to you afterwards so I can go back and double check it. And there's all your English language arts and the technology. So I know some of you might be quite stressed out about the changes made with the 2022 curriculum updates. So we were trying to take a lot of that off your plate. So this lesson, at least all these lessons are done for you, and you've got the codes and you've got everything. So once Power School is up and running with those, you'll be able to pop them right in. And then, like they said, these are all of our, this is the slides, the lesson plans, the See, Think, Wonder, that's all going to be on the Ben website as well. As long as, so we'll email them to you, but they'll also be on the website. So if you don't get it, just check back there in a day or two. And just, yeah, keep in touch. We really enjoy putting on these workshops for teachers. We know how overworked and overstressed you all are. So if there's anything we can do to support, we are here. But we really appreciate your feedback. So you can tell us what went well, what challenges there were, what ideas and things you added. We'd love it if you sent some pictures, because as I said, Ben is a registered charity. So if we had some pictures of children in your class really enjoying and being into these lessons, we could pass them on to our donors. So, or if you want to, or if, that wouldn't also include a permission slip to share photos and all that from your students. So if you just want to send pictures of the work, that would be great too. And then lastly, we have I wonder if it's still, hold on one second. A feedback form that we would love it if you guys could write that for us, because we're lifelong learners as well, and always trying to do our best as presenters. So if there's anything you want to let us know, what went well, what questions you might still have, any challenges, I'm going to put that in the chat in about 2 seconds. Let's see. Does anyone have any feedback or questions or comments now?
I would like to say thank you for all the work that you have done. It makes our lives easier, especially with the new CIE codes. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. That was our goal. That was the first thing when Florence was telling me about the changes. We're like, we've got to sort this out for them. They don't have time for this.
I'd also like to express my gratitude for the support that this provides as it links up with what we're trying to do in class, and it makes it come alive. And I remember going on several field trips with different groups, and they come back and they are just so enthused. They don't just make a connection, but they're excited about something that happened in a history book, but it was like it's right in their own backyard. So the support and the creativity, with Miss Becky and all the staff who reenacted really makes the history come alive. And so all the work that you're doing, I'm extremely grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. I'm not a social studies buff at all. I think that's the subject I kind of like, I don't want to teach it. So thank you, because I was excited hearing about the lessons. And so I know my students are going to be excited and they're going to look forward to this field trip. So thank you so much for doing the work for us and helping us to make it exciting for our students.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. We have a great team too. So Bermuda is tricky, right? It's not as though there's some, 20 great websites on teaching Bermuda history to children. So we have a great team of Steph and Latoya and absolutely Becky, who even when we're preparing things, I'm like, oh, I need something on this. And then suddenly WhatsApp is going off. Oh, I've got an article on pirates. Oh, look at this one. And they're a wealth of information and helpfulness. So yes, thank you for acknowledging them as well. Very grateful for them.
And can
would
I
like to
just
also
add?
say thank you as well. Sorry. Oops, sorry.
That's okay. I just
Yeah.
wanted to add that I'm a P5 teacher who's in the trenches. And while I do this because I really want a way of kind of helping out more, if you ever want to get in touch with me about anything that's going on with our social studies P5 curriculum, my door is always open. And I think when our minds come together, that's when the best kind of things happen. And we need more of that with all of the stress that's on all of our plates. And so if anyone would like to get in touch outside of this about anything to do with social studies or anything to do with P5, and I can lend a hand, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Can you post your email address?
Sure.
And then Ms. James, I think you were going to say something.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just was reading. Yes, I really, really appreciate your hard work. It looks really laid out very good, and I'm just excited about history coming alive for the students, because I was just thinking about, okay, because I just started this unit and I was just talking about the Gunpowder plot, and they were so excited, and I was trying to reenact it, and model it in class, and they were like, "Oh, Miss James," and they got really excited. So I like the way you have, structured it, and it's, I will look forward to at least taking them on a field trip, trying to get an expedition, because I'm late with this, trying to get an expedition spot or slot. If someone can help me with that, that would be great.
Absolutely. Staff, if you're still in there, could you put the Sign Up Genius, or Latoya, could you put the link for Sign Up Genius in the chat?
I might be able to find it quickly here too if they're not there.
I know, and that was my hardest thing during COVID, because I love getting kids out and going somewhere, because that's what they remember, right? So with COVID, when it was like no field trips, I was like shaking. I'm like, like, no, these, because they don't, no kid ever goes home, "Oh, that was a great worksheet we did today." Like that's not the stuff they remember.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, so I believe that's all we had for today. We know that it is late, a long day when you're still at school at 4:38. So I'll stay on if anyone else has any questions, or if you just need to copy and paste links. We would really appreciate the feedback form. You've made my whole day with the comments that you've said, but if you would mind just going through the forms as well, we greatly appreciate that. And it's like 3 questions. It's not intense.
I have a question. I went onto this link that was just posted,
Mhm.
and I can't seem to click on any buttons to allow me to, fill in an expedition slot. It's just saying filled up or.
Oh,
Can you help me
okay.
with that
So
one?
I see Latoya has just written in a message that it might be full, but she's added her email there, horizons@ben.bm. We're going to get you in. Don't worry
Okay.
about that. So if
Okay,
there's not a spot in there, just email Latoya Pearman at horizons@ben.bm and she'll set it all up.
okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Latoya. If you don't have anything
Alright.
else, thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a wonderful break coming up soon. You can get some rest. I know it's still like, it's on my head, but I know it's still like 2.5 weeks out, but I'm looking forward to it as well. So I hope you all enjoy yours and have great productive 2.5 weeks before with your classes. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.